Alien Property Custodian, Bureaucratic History. October 22nd, 1917, Trading with the Enemy Act, Alien Property Custodian appointed by President Woodrow Wilson under authority of Section 6, APC was empowered to receive, hold, administer, and account for money and property in the United States belonging to an enemy or ally of an enemy. 40 Statute at Large 415. As you know, Title 1 enacted into positive law. Title 1, subsection 112 and 113 states that the statutes at large are legal evidence from the highest court to the lowest court in all jurisdictions. They are legal evidence of law. They cannot be challenged. They're just automatically accepted, and they are evidence of the law. All right? There's a reason I'm taking you guys all through this, to show you the importance of the alien property custodian holder. There was a trust created for you. That trust you've been using your entire life. You're just unaware of it. And I hope these videos help you to comprehend that things are not what you've been led to believe, and there is remedy for you. But you have to ascend to the mind, acquiring the knowledge necessary to handle your affairs and come up out of your minor status. December 9th, 1932, Executive Order 5968 recommends transfer of alien property custodian to the Justice Department. Special message to Congress. President Herbert Hoover recommended to Congress that the alien property custodian be transferred to the Justice Department. Message and accompanying Executive Order 5968 cited the Reorganization Act of Congress of June 30th, 1932, in which Congress stated its policy of grouping executive agencies and reducing their number through consolidation of those having similar functions. Executive Order provided for the transfer of APC powers, duties, functions, personnel, and records. The APC powers would be conferred on the Attorney General. The executive order was to be effective February 10th, 1933, unless Congress determined otherwise. Executive Order 5968, 1932, compilation, public papers of the President Herbert Hoover, volume 1932 through 1933, pages 882 through 883 and 888. January 19th, 1933, House Resolution 334. House passed resolution disapproving of all 11 executive orders in President Hoover's message. Executive Order 5968, authorizing transfer, was prevented from taking effect. Public papers of the President Herbert Hoover, volume 1932 through 1933, page 891. March 1st, 1934, Executive Order 6694, Office of Alien Property Custodian, was abolished by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Authority, rights, privilege, powers, and duties were transferred to the Justice Department. Office of Alien Property Custodian was to be administered under the supervision of the Attorney General. All officers and employees were transferred. Official records and papers on file were transferred to the Justice Department. All funds, securities, real estate, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and all other property to which the alien property custodian had title, possession, or control, or were held in trust for the alien property custodian, were transferred to the Attorney General. Attorney General authorized to administer and dispose of property. All expenses incurred by the Department of Justice in the administration of the Trading with the Enemy Act shall be paid out of the money or other property transferred to the Department of Justice or out of interest or other earnings. Transfer was to be effective on July 1st, 1934. Executive Order 6694, 1934, compilation. May 2nd, 1935. Transfer to the Justice Department took place. Government Manual 1939, page 8A, February 1940, page 521. No documentation was found for the decision to delay the transfer in the public papers and addresses of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, volumes 1934 and 1935. Presidential Executive Order Index for Executive Order dated June 1st, 1934 through March 10th, 1935, or Congressional documents. 1935. Alien Property Bureau established in the Justice Department, placed in the Claims Division. Assistant Attorney General over Claims Division has charge of all civil suits and claims for and against the federal government that are not specifically assigned. Claims include patents, copyright, and cases arising out of war transactions. Bureau assigned function formerly handled by the Alien Property Custodian. Bureau now handled alien property claims and litigation. Government Manual 1939, page 3739. Earlier reference being reached February 1940, page 106, September 1941, page 244. May 15, 1939, Executive Order 8136. All powers and authority conferred on the President by the Trading with the Enemy Act were delegated to the Attorney General or the Assistant Attorney General in charge of the Claims Division. All securities in which the Secretary of the Treasury had invested money deposited in the Treasury by the Alien Property Custodian or the Attorney General were to be sold by the Secretary of the Treasury. The proceeds were to be deposited in the Treasury to the account of the Attorney General, Alien Property Bureau. Executive Order 8136, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, 1943 through 1948, compilation, page 500. April 10, 1940, Executive Order 8389, Foreign Funds Control established in the Treasury Department to freeze and block all assets of invaded countries, issued under the authority in Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act as amended. Executive Order prohibited all financial transactions unless specifically regulated and licensed by the Treasury Department. Stopped, all transfers of credit, all transactions in foreign exchange, all exports of gold and silver bullion and coin and currency, all withdrawals from safe deposit boxes. Secretary of the Treasury was to determine by regulation and ruling the conditions under which licenses would be granted. Goal was to prevent the Axis from using the assets of the governments and nationals of occupied countries for its war purposes. Executive Order 8389, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, 1938 through 1943, compilations, page 645 through 647, report to Congress by Secretary Henry McGunthrew, as reprinted in Treasury Department Annual Report, 1945, Exhibit 51, page 423. 1940 through 1941, Alien Property Bureau in 1940 was still handling cases growing out of World War I. Aggregate amount involved in suit was $26.1 million, of which $15.2 was claimed by the federal government and $10.9 was claimed against the U.S. government. Ironically, one of the biggest suits involving fraud was against the Swiss Bank Corporation Bureau, also made administrative determinations to return property. Annual Report of Attorney General, 1940, page 117, 119, 1942, pages 140 through 141. June 14, 1941, Executive Order Foreign Fund Control is extended to all countries in Europe. Executive Order now includes prohibitions on transactions in securities. Secretary of the Treasury is empowered to issue regulations and rulings to carry out Executive Order 8785. Section 4 authorizes the Secretary of the Treasury and the Attorney General to require reports on any transactions listed in Sections 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act relative to any property in which any foreign country or its nationals have any interest of any kind. Attorney General and Treasury Secretary have the authority to call for books of account, contracts, letters, or other documents. Attorney General or Treasury Secretary may, through any agency, investigate any transaction or any violation of Executive Order 8785. Executive Order 8785, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, 1938 through 1943, compilations, page 949. June 11, 1941. Order of Attorney General Research Section established. In the Alien Property Bureau, dealt with interagency matters, handled problems arising from the Department of Justice participation in the Policy Committee on Foreign Funds Control, collaborated with State and Treasury and the Administrator of Export Control on matters connected with Executive Order 8389. In the summer of 1941, Research Section was investigating the extent of foreign ownership, control, or interest in America, properties, or business. Annual Report of the Attorney General, 1941, page 144. September 1941, Government Manual as a Special National Defense Program Section Claims Division of the Justice Department is described as representing the department in all matters involving enemy property. Notes the division performs certain functions assigned to the Department of Justice by Executive Order 8785, freezing foreign assets. Government Manual, September 1941, page 117. Spring 1942, Alien Property Division established in the Justice Department for the seizure and administration of alien property during time of war, created to perform functions of the alien property custodian, transferred to Justice by Executive Order 6694 of May 1934. No information found so far on fate of Alien Property Bureau. Government Manual, Spring 1942, page 176, 182. Fall of 1942, page 601. March 11, 1942, Executive Order 9095. Office of Alien Property Custodian was established by the President, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Office was placed in the Office for Emergency Management of Executive Office of the President. President designated the head of the agency as the Alien Property Custodian. Alien Property Custodian was appointed by the President. All powers and authorities conferred on the President by Sections 3A and 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act, by Sections 301 and 302 of the First War Powers Act of December 1941, were delegated to the Alien Property Custodian. Executive Order provided for 2-week exceptions to the transfer. Power and authority delegated to the Secretary of the Treasury by Executive Order issued prior to February 12, 1942. Powers and authority delegated to the Federal Reserve System by Executive Order 8843 of August 9, 1941. These powers shall continue to be vested in and exercised by the Secretary of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve Board. Any property of any foreign country or its nationals shall vest in the alien property custodian whenever the alien property custodian shall direct. Section 3. In the case where property is subject to the control of the Secretary of the Treasury, the alien property custodian shall inform the Secretary. The Secretary of the Treasury shall release all control of any such property to the alien property custodian. Executive Order 9095, Title 3, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 1938 through 1943 compilations, page 1121. April 21st, 1942, Executive Order 9142, all authority, rights, privileges, powers, duties, and functions delegated to the Attorney General by Executive Orders 6694 and 8136 were transferred to the Office of the Alien Property Custodian. Records, files, and equipment of the Alien Property Division, DOJ, Department of Justice, were transferred to the Alien Property Custodian. Section 2. All funds, securities, real estate, patents, trademarks, copyrights, and all other property held by the Attorney General under the Trading with the Enemy Act were transferred to the Alien Property Custodian. All litigation in which the Alien Property Custodian or the Office of Alien Property Custodian is interested shall be conducted under the supervision of the Attorney General. The Attorney General was to give legal advice to the Alien Property Custodian. Expenses for advice and litigation were to be paid out of the funds of property in the possession of the Alien Property Custodian. Nothing in Executive Order 9142 was to require the Department of Justice to surrender any files or records relating to any litigation it was conducting. Executive Order 9142 was to remain in effect for the duration of the war and for 6 months after the termination of the war. Executive Order 9142, Title 3, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 1943 to 1943, compilations, page 1148. May 19, 1942, War Division created in the Justice Department established two more expeditiously carry out the Justice Department's work relating to war planning, alien enemy control, and alien property control. Division consisted of 3 units: Special War Policies Unit, Alien Enemy Control Unit, Alien Property Control Unit. Alien Property Control Unit was established to supervise and conduct litigation growing out of the seizure and administration of alien property during the war. Government Manual, fall of 1942, pages 210, 211 through 212, and page 574. July 6, 1942, Executive Order 9193, creating the Office of the Alien Property Custodian and defining the function of the Alien Property Custodian, amended Executive Order 9095. Alien Property Custodian was authorized and empowered to control or vest property belonging to an enemy. Alien Property Custodian could also direct, manage, and or supervise enemy property, including any enemy-owned or controlled business enterprise within the United States. Evidence of ownership, control of, or interest in such a business enterprise, any other property within the United States owned or controlled by nationals of neutral or occupied countries and were under Treasury regulations. Alien Property Custodian was to certify to the Secretary of the Treasury that it was necessary in the national interest for the Alien Property Custodian to assume control in order to, Section 2B, protect the property, remove personal or supervise employment policies, liquidate, reorganize, or sell the property, direct the management, deal with the property to the benefit of the United States. Vest enemy property was not to include cash, bullion, money, currencies, deposits, credit instruments, foreign exchange, and securities. Section 2C. This list of financial instruments was controlled by Foreign Funds Control and the Treasury Department. Listed in Executive Order 9193 was meant to alleviate duplication and conflict between the two agencies involved in seizing property. Unless the dollar, balance, bullion, and securities were needed by the Alien Property Custodian in the protection and management of other property belonging to the same enemy country or national, any foreign patents, trademarks, and copyrights, application for same, and royalties and license fees. Ships or interest therein, all forms of property and claims of enemy nationals involved in estates, trust, receiverships, or where under judicial supervision, alien property custodian had to notify the Secretary of the Treasury in writing if he vested any property under the control of Treasury Secretary of the Treasury shall release all control of such property or do as the alien property custodian directs. Section 3 outlined the function of the Secretary of the Treasury. All powers and authorities conferred on the President by Sections 3A and Sections 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act were delegated to the Secretary of the Treasury or a person designated by him. Proviso clearly stated that when any property not belonging to a foreign government or central bank was vested by the Secretary, such property shall be vested in and dealt with by the alien property custodian under terms directed by the Secretary of the Treasury. Executive Order 9193 did not amend Executive Order 8839. This meant the Secretary of the Treasury continued to handle dollar balances, bullion, and securities of governments and nationals except those belonging to an enemy business. All property or of occupied or neutral countries and their custodian had determined it is necessary for him to assume control all transactions or business dealings with countries frozen under the freezing orders, control of all trade and communication with enemy and enemy-controlled countries. All other phases of the freezing control, Section 4, empowered both the Secretary of the Treasury and the alien property custodian to prescribe regulations to carry out executive order. Each official was to make his files available to the other. Each was to keep the other informed of currently ongoing investigations of enemy ownership and control of business enterprises. Section 5 authorized the alien property custodian to represent the interest of enemy nationals and persons in occupied countries in judicial and administrative proceedings in the United States. Section 6 delegated all power conferred on the presidency by Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act to the alien property custodian. Alien Property Custodian, APC, was authorized to make investigation and to require reports. Both the Alien Property Custodian and the Treasury were given full powers under Section 5B of the Trading with the Enemy Act as amended by First War Powers Act. Section 8 transferred all records, property, and personnel in the Treasury Department that were used primarily in the administration of the powers and duties exercised by the Alien Property Custodian, APC, to the alien property custodian. In case of any disagreement over the transfer, the director of the Bureau of the Budget would make the determination. Section 10 defined enemy country to mean those nations with which the U.S. was at war: Germany, Italy, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Japan. The term national carried the same definition as that in Executive Order 8389 of April 10, 1940. However, it carried a proviso. Persons within designated enemy-occupied countries or areas shall not be deemed to be nationals of a designated enemy country unless the APC, Alien Property Custodian, so made such a determination. That such person is controlled by or acting for or on behalf of a designated enemy. This definition includes cloaks. Such a person is a citizen of a designated enemy country and is within an enemy-occupied country or area. The national interest of the United States required that such a person be treated as an enemy national. Alien property custodian's determination: any property is the property of an enemy country, was final. Section 11 required that the Secretary of the Treasury and the alien property custodian consult with the Secretary of State before vesting any property. Section 11 further required the Secretary of the Treasury shall consult with the Secretary of State before adding any more foreign countries to the list in Executive Order 8389. Executive Order 9193, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 1938 through 1943 compilations, pages 1174 through 1177, United States Treasury Department documents pertaining to foreign funds control, September 15th, 1946, press release number 37, page 74. April 7th, 1943, Executive Order 9325, payment of expenses of the Office of Alien Property Custodian. Alien Property Custodian was authorized and empowered to pay out of any funds lawfully in his custody or under his control all necessary expenses incurred by the office in carrying out his duty. Alien Property Custodian was authorized to retain, allocate, and recover as a charge against any specific property expenses attributable to such property. Alien Property Custodian, APC, was also authorized to retain, allocate, and recover as a charge against money or property in his custody such amounts as may be necessary in connection with the general administrative expenses of the agency and which were not particularly allocated to a specific property. This power shall not be limited by the filing of a claim against such property. Executive Order 9325, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 1938 through 1943 compilation, page 1285. July 22nd, 1943, Vested Property Claims Committee established. In the Office of the Alien Property Custodian, committee had jurisdiction over all claims. The Vested Property Committee was authorized by the Alien Property Custodian to allow or disallow claims. If a claim was allowed, the Alien Property Custodian issued a divesting order. Annual report of the Office of Alien Property Custodian, June 30th, 1944, page 141. June 8th, 1945, Executive Order, technical amendments to Sections 2C of Executive Order 9193. Executive Order 9567, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 1943 through 1948, compilation, page 391. March 8, 1946, Public Law 322, return of vested property to friendly foreign nationals. Sections 32, a new section of the Trading with the Enemy Act, permitted the return of property to friendly foreign nationals who met certain qualifications. One of the stipulations was that the owner did not hold or use the asset prior to vesting by the Alien Property Custodian, APC, in a way that would conceal property of a person ineligible to receive a return. Sections 32A3. Alien Property Custodian is mentioned several times in Section 32. Public Law 322, 60, Statute at Large 50 through 52, Section 32F, specified that the President or designated official shall publish in the Federal Register 30 days before making a return a notice of intent to return stating the name of the person to whom return is to be made and the place where the property or proceeds are to be returned or located. Public Law 322, 60, Stat 53. Sections 20, governing a schedule of fees, was part of the original 1917 version of the law. Purpose of the Section 20 was to protect the owner seeking restoration of seized property from unreasonable or extortionate fees for service. Public Law 322 of March 8, 1946 increased the limit on fees from 3% of the amount involved to 10%. Fees were those charged by agents, attorneys, or others for service in returning vested property. Ironically, Increase came at the same time that a fairly large group of property owners were able to submit a claim for the return of their vested assets. Public Law 322-60, Stat 54. May 16th, 1946, Executive Order 9725 designated the alien property custodian to administer powers conferred upon the President by Section 20 and Section 32 of the Trading with the Enemy Act. Alien property custodian was designated by President Harry Truman to administer the powers and authorities under Sections 20 and the amendment, Section 32, of the Trading with the Enemy Act. Alien property custodian could delegate to the officers and employees the function as he deemed necessary. Executive Order 9725, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 1943 through 1948, compilation, page 529. Terminal Report, Alien Property Custodian, October 1946, page 12, 32, 33, 31. August 8, 1946, Public Law 671, Return of Property to Individuals Deprived of Life or Liberty. Sections 32. A. Written to list those to whom return or vested property could not be made, proviso added to Sections 32A2, defining as an individual not voluntarily resident in the territory of a nation with which U.S. was at war as an individual who was deprived of life or substantially deprived of liberty pursuant to any law, decree, or regulation, discriminating against political, racial, or religious groups. Second proviso covered those who did not enjoy full rights of citizenship under the law of the nation, discriminating against political, racial, or religious groups. The importance of these two provisos was that the vested property of these individuals could be returned. Provisos allowed the president or the designated official to return property vested in the alien property custodian. Section 34, a new section, permitted debt claims to be filed against vested property. Valid debt claims could be filed by resident creditors against the former owners of vested property. Alien property custodian was to equitably apply any vested property to the payment of debts owed by the person who owned the property immediately prior to its vesting or transfer to the alien property custodian. No debt claim was to be allowed under Section 34 if it was not due and owing at the time of vesting. Powers of alien property custodian in the filing of debt claims was outlined in the law, Sections 34B through F. Sections 34G listed the order of priority in which the custodian was to pay debt claims. Public Law 671, 60, Statute 930, 925, 926 through 928. Terminal Report, Alien Property Custodian, October 1946, page 13, 32, 33, 32. October 14, 1946, Executive Order 9788 terminated the office of the alien property custodian. Executive Order 9788, Title III, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR 1943 through 1948, compilations, page 575. 1949, War Claims Act of 1948, amended, established a war claims fund to pay U.S. soldiers and civilian POWs, prisoners of war. Late 1950s Claims Division at the Department of Justice is ended and functions are transferred. August 23, 1954, Sections 32H is added to the Trading with the Enemy Act. Importance is that it allows a successor organization to use heirless property as a source of funds and assets to assist survivors. 68 Stat 767. January 13, 1955, Executive Order 1058-7, Jewish Restitution Successor Organization, JRSO, is designated as a successor in interest to deceased persons in accordance with 32H of the Trading with the Enemy Act, Executive Order 1058-7, Title 3, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, 1954 through 1958 compilations, page 235 through 236. 1955, 1960 through 1965, JRSO files over 7,000 claims with the OAP. 1961, OAP became part of Civil Division at the Department of Justice. October 22nd, 1962, Executive Order 11086, JRSO awarded $500,000 after 9 years of pleading with Congress. At first, award was to be $3 million, limit set by former Secretary of War Robert Patterson. 9 years of wrangling with Congress left award at $500,000 out of the War Claims Fund, money to be used to help survivors. 76 Stat 1114. February 26, 1963, Executive Order 11086, JRSO, remains successor in interest to heirless assets amended but actually rewrites Executive Order 1058-7. Foreign Claims Settlement Commission is to carry out the functions of Sections 32H, jurisdiction over claims filed by JRSO, remain with the Attorney General. Executive Order 11086, Title 3, Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, 1959 through 1963 compilation, page 721 through 722. February 5th, 1980, Attorney General deleted Title 8, Chapter 2, Office of Alien Property, Parts 501 through 510 from the Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, because the vesting program conducted by the Alien Property Custodian under the authority of the Trading with the Enemy Act and all administrative claims under Sections 32 and 34 of the Act, which were governed by rules of the Office of Alien Property, have now been determined. Remaining functions of Department of Justice relate to managing and disposing of records and correspondence relating to World War II vesting program. These functions are not governed by OAP rules, and therefore republication of the rules was discontinued. 45 FR 7778. August 28, 1988, Public Law 100-418, Office of Alien Property Custodian, Office of Alien Property was terminated by an act of Congress. Section 39A through E were struck from the Trading with the Enemy Act. A new section, 39B, provided that the Attorney General was to cover into the Treasury all sums from property vested in the Attorney General and not placed in the deposit account through the Treasury into a war claims fund, sums which the Attorney General determines are the subject of judicial actions do not have to be so deposited. 102 Stat 1107, 1370 through 1371. Bureaucratic History in Progress, May through June 2000. Chronology of changes in APC, Alien Property Custodian, OAP rules for claims. July 16, 1942, Form Alien Property Custodian 1 was adopted. Claims to vested property were filed on Form APC 1 in triplicate. Original of each claim had to be executed under oath. 1943, first entry of Title 8, Chapter 2, Official Office of Alien Property Custodian in the Code of Federal Regulations, published in 1943, cumulative supplement to the CFR, Part 501.1 gives rules on receipt and disposition of claims. Part 501.1B through G describes vested property claims committee and its work. 1943, other types of claim forms listed in CFR Supplement APC Alien Property Custodian 16 for use by investors or of vested patents. Alien Property Custodian 17, APC 17, for use by assignees of vested patent. 1943, July 22nd, 1943, Vested Property Claims Committee set up three-man tribunal before which citizens with vested property could be heard. Committee held hearings, examined evidence, heard witnesses. A complete transcript of the testimony was to be kept. Determined action to be taken on claims, issued a determination of fact and law. Alien Property Custodian issued a decision. APC could adopt, modify, reverse, remand, or otherwise dispose of committee's determination. 1943, General Counsel of Office of Alien Property Custodian could initiate a summary proceeding for allowance of any claim which the General Counsel deemed so clearly entitled to allowance that the public interest did not require a contest or hearing. General Counsel submitted recommendations for allowing claim to the Vested Property Claims Committee. 1946, Vested Property Claims Committee role changed. All claims shall be determined on behalf of the Alien Property Custodian by the Vested Property Claims Committee. Committee was to exercise all powers of the custodian in the hearing, consideration, and disposition of the claims. Part 501.1b. 1946. Name of organization is changed to Office of Alien Property. Office of Alien Property Custodian is abolished and functions are moved to Justice Department. On October 14, 1946, Attorney General sets up separate office. 1946, Part 501, renamed Rules of Procedure. Part 501 provided great detail on claims forms. 1946, August 26, new section 506, availability of records added to rules, claims, and records heard by the Vesting Property Claims Committee were available for public inspection. 1947, Claims Branch to process all claims for return of property pursuant to Sections 32 and 34 of Act handles fee matters under Section 20. 1947, Hearing Examiner Branch established under the Chief Hearing Examiner. Hearing examiners hear and determine contested claims arising under Sections 20, 32, and 34 of Act. Claimant has burden of proof in all issue involved in the claim proceedings under Part 504.12f. Any party shall have the power to call and examine witnesses. Disposition may also be taken and submitted. 1947 provided for procedure for allowing a claim without a hearing in Part 504.12. Otherwise, no claim shall be allowed or disallowed except after a hearing in Part 504.103, requirements for a hearing. 1947, examiner to render a decision as soon as practicable after receipt of complete transcript and exhibits relating to a claim. Decision shall include statement of findings and conclusion, given reason and basis for conclusion. 1947, new part of 504 is written into Chapter 2, revised part covered Rules of Procedure for Claims, former part 501.1 revoked. 1947, notice of return order to be published. Return order to be issued as soon as practicable, a 30 days after publication of notice under Part 504.110. 1948, December 31st, first publication of all the Office of Alien Property rules in the Federal Register. Rules were amended and recodified. Rules were codified into 12 parts: 501, 502, 503, 504, 505, 506, 507, 508, 509, 510, 511, and 512. New Part 502 was redesignated from Part 504 as the Rules of Procedure for Claims. Part 502 was amended 7 times over 12 years. 1961 was the first year no changes or additions were made to codify rules. 1948, Chief of Claims Branch makes recommendations on attorney's fees, conserva- conservancy expenses, and taxes in part of 502.102E. 1949, publication of Title 8, Chapter 2, Office of Alien Property in 1949 edition of the Code of Federal Regulations continued. The 12 parts, Part 502, remained the rules of procedure for claims. 1951, October 29th, decisions in claims case to be made by hearing examiner who presides at hearing. 1952, June 4th, amendments made to rules for motion to dismiss a claim by the chief of the claim branch hearing to be held on motion to dismiss. 1952, December 24th, amended rules of procedure for claims filed under Sections 9A, 32, and 34 of the Trading with the Enemy Act. 1953, September 29th, amended rules of procedure governing motion to dismiss a claim. 1953, December 17th, Claims Branch of OAP redesignated claims section. 1954, February 25th, changes the general rules of procedure under Part 501, includes forms changes to Part 503, gave the public permission to inspect patent records. 1954, October 6th, amends to Part 503, covered non-availability of records. 1957, April 11th, technical amendment to definitions of title claim. Definitions still include claims under Section 32 of Trading with the Enemy Act. 1951 through 1957, various amendments to Part 511 blocked assets amendments generally dealt with scheduled looted securities. 1966, May 19th, rule under Part 511 blocked assets moved from CFR Title 8 to CFR Title 31, Money and Finance. Treasury became Title 31, Chapter 5, Foreign Asset Control, Part 520, Foreign Funds Control Regulations. 1980, February 5th, Title 8, Chapter 2, Office of Alien Property, Parts 501 through 510, deleted from Code of Federal Regulations at request of Attorney General.